I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on Shadowrun. I was talking about magic in the Awakened world. Let's talk about the Astral Plane. Now, the Astral Plane is sort of the shadow that exists at all places and all locations as the same point as the real world. Sort of our shadow that exists at all times, echoing us. When you would be there, you would look through and you could see sort of the world itself from the astral plane. It mirrors it. Things that exist in the astral plane exist in all the things that exist in our world. Everything that's an object appears gray and dull and lifeless. Things that are live and fused, possibly with mana, show up as colorful. That is the thing, that it is the place of not only the home of spirits and magic, but it is where the very mana from the meta planes kind of flows through from the astral planes into our world. So it is this kind of gateway between the deeper meta planes, far beyond what our normal scope would be to understand, that only the most powerful of magicians can even think about accessing, and flows the energy from there into our world. When you are looking at things in the astral form that are alive, they give off this sort of glow, as I said, which is effectively some kind of aura. It turns out that the very earth we stand on gives out some kind of aura too, making it seem as though it may even be alive. Now, things like emotions also affect what's going on. So while you might have an aura as a living creature, if you are filled with a lot of emotions, your aura would be more vibrant. As I say, everything non-living is just kind of cold, dull, and gray and lifeless. If something is awakened, it has a much more vibrant, almost maybe rainbow aura that may be associated with it that shows up because it has that magical nature to it. Things of magical nature that exist both within the astral and the physical plane have their own auras, which are incredibly, like, showing off this glow that exists that makes it very obvious almost if you can understand the auras about what it means, what kind of being it really is. Now, when someone that is awakened magically, such as a magician or an adept, could possibly learn to astrally perceive. Astrally perceive means that you are in the real world and you are peering into the astral plane and beginning to perceive there, which is not the kind of sense you would think about this perception. It is more of a psychic sense. It is not a vision or a sound-based sense, because if you don't have those senses, you can still perceive into the astral plane. Once you are looking there, you are seeing the world as it is in the astral plane, where everything else that you just have around you would be gray, like all the objects around me would be gray, all the living auras would be showing up. At this point in time, I can try to interpret the senses I have with the skill called assessing. Assessing is an intuition plus assessing tense, and the number of hits you get gives you more and more information. There's a chart that will tell you how much information you are when you're perceiving into this. You're sort of looking into the astral plane, and you're trying to understand what's there. Your vision, you can shift it back and forth as a simple action. So that means you could shift it into the astral plane to sort of assess something and look at it, and then shift it back afterwards. When you are perceiving astrally, you are technically dual-natured, which means you are connected to both planes and could be affected by things from both planes. You are effectively opening yourself up to both in a little bit ways, but there is uses to it. There may be times you might have to roll a lot for assessing. You can just sort of perceive some general things. You might have to delve into secrets, though, which may require a test. Depending on the nature of the test, which depends on what kind of things you have to roll. You could learn, like, emotions, magical nature, if something's enchanted, things like this that you can tell about an aura. You can even use this on a non-awakened creature to get some general information about them, like their health, maybe their emotional state. Now, you can also use this to assess the auras left behind by spells. Spells will leave behind a kind of aura that you can read, a kind of signature that you can understand, that when a spell becomes permanent, it no longer is emanating that aura. In the same sense, there are auras that exist that you can leave a signature behind, that someone that would be trained at it, such as a forensic magician, would be able to read these auras and track them back. There are many that can use astral projection to sort of hide your aura. For your aura, your signature from casting spells or summoning spirits lasts for 1 hour per force of whatever effect you're causing. Someone that's trying to track you could try and make an assessing test. With 3 or more hits, you at least get a basic idea of the signature, basic idea of what was going on. 5 or more hits, you have begun to track it. You have identified the signature and can easily identify it again if you encounter it. Someone that is trying to hide their signature could use a number of complex actions equal to the force, while astrally perceiving, to kind of erase their signature after they've used it. So you might have some kind of magical battle when on a run, but afterwards you want to take a little bit of time and hide your signature if you really needed to do something like that. Now you can go into both normal combat and astral combat while you are astrally perceiving. If you go into any kind of normal combat or attempting a normal activity, you just get -2 to all your dice pools. You can still sort of see what's going on. You can tell where people are because of their auras. You can tell where everything is because it's gray. You're still physically in the world and interacting with it, but it's just sort of dull and muted because all the sounds and sights of the real world in the astral plane are just this dull, muted. You can't quite understand it. You can sort of hear that something's going on. You can sort of see. It's just slightly not understandable, and that dulling sensation is what gives you that -2. So that's it for today. I talked about the basics of the astral plane, talked about a little bit about understanding it, about talking about what it means to be in the astral plane, what you see when you're there, what kind of world it is, and I talked about astrally perceiving, when you're peering from the real world into the astral plane, using that as your effective sight. Perceiving that as your real world, overlaying what your normal senses would be with that. Next time I'm going to talk about astral projection, going actually physically into the astral plane in a way. I will talk about mana barriers and astral combat, getting into fights in the astral plane. So if you have questions, comments, anything you say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support for the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, please check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.